Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching America 360 on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the new US and national security strategy unveiled last week contained parts that were unacceptable to US from a European perspective. The Turk Stream pipeline, evading sanctions, relocates its base from the Netherlands to Hungary, allowing uninterrupted operation. This move skirts litigation issues linked to Russia's actions in Ukraine. China warns US over Taiwan after Trump's security strategy. China rebuked the US's national security strategy, bolstering Taiwan's defenses as Beijing vows to defend its sovereignty claims amid rising Indo-Pacific tensions. A Russian Soyuz MS-27 capsule carrying NASA astronaut Johnny Kim, Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhkov and Alexei Zubritsky expected to land outside the Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan. American actor and playwright Jeremy O. Harris was released from custody in Japan on Monday after his arrest last month on suspicion of attempting to smuggle drugs into the country, as per a police spokesperson. US President Donald Trump says NVIDIA and other US chip makers can sell their advanced H200 chips to approved customers in China after months of pressure from industry leaders. He says the move protects national security and jobs, while NVIDIA welcomes the decision amid ongoing US-China tech tensions. And viewers, let's start the bulletin with the top focus. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has said that the new US national security strategy unveiled last week contained parts that were unacceptable from a European perspective. Merz also said that Europe needs to become less dependent on the United States, responding directly to Washington's strategic shift. While Merz rejected components of the US strategy, he also described it as unsurprising, beg your pardon, in substance, with the document roughly reflecting what US Vice President J.D. Vance already said in February at the Munich Security Conference. Merz has said that the document continues President Trump's America First approach, but warned that sidelining allies would not serve US interests. The new US National Security Strategy document, which was released last week, outlined the Trump administration's priorities in foreign and security policy. It focused on the Indo-Pacific region while rejecting European governments' characterization of Russia as an existential threat. Meanwhile, listen in to what Merz had to say.
Manches darin ist nachvollziehbar, manches darin ist verständlich, manches darin ist für uns aus der europäischen Sicht inakzeptabel. Dass die Amerikaner nun die Demokratie in Europa retten wollen, dafür sehe ich keine Notwendigkeit. Das, wenn sie zu retten wäre, das würden wir schon alleine hinbekommen. Ich sage in meinen Gesprächen mit den Amerikanern, America First ist fein, aber America Alone kann nicht in eurem Interesse sein. Ihr braucht auf der Welt auch Partner.
And now David K. Johnston, who's an American author, joins us live from New York. Thank you, David, for giving us time and speaking to us here at NewsX World once again. Do tell us what's in it, the new US security strategy that's irking Europe, particularly the German Chancellor.
Well, the reason you've seen Chancellor Merz and Prime Minister Starmer in London be so critical of this is essentially the new U.S. national security document is a might makes right document. It would send us back to the era where the great powers theory was in place, in which Moscow, Washington, and a few other places dominate the world and subjugate countries in their geographic sphere. And the Europeans, it's very clear, understand that the Russian plan in Ukraine is just part one of a campaign to take back control of what was the satellites, the Iron Curtain countries. So this is a deep threat to them.
Now, the document is also flagging concern over China's growing economic influence in Latin America.
Yes, Trump fundamentally, to the extent that he even knows what's in this document and understands it, which knowing him for almost 40 years, I think is a rather minimal idea, very much wants to argue that the United States is in charge of the Western Hemisphere and we will do as we choose, which is not what the Monroe Doctrine was about. It came out when 11 Latin American countries had or were breaking free from Spanish imperialism and becoming independent. And this proposal really doesn't do anything to try and contain China and limit China, which has been a basic U.S. diplomatic and military strategy for all of my lifetime, even with the rapprochement that began with Richard Nixon in 1972.
And how is it that Europe is going to expect more independence from Trump on its policies? Of course, with Russia-Ukraine war looming over and Trump being the key negotiator, the statement is rather surprising at this point in time.
Well, the peace plan that Chancellor Merz was being critical of is essentially a Russian document. And one of the things it requires is that the Ukrainians give up territory that the Russians have been unable, after almost 4 years of the invasion, to occupy. The closeness with which Donald Trump's positions right now fit with those of Vladimir Putin is quite alarming, and it's clear that the European leaders understand that this is a real problem, and they've got to figure out how to draw Donald back towards the position he seemed to be at a few months ago. But of course, Donald doesn't have any underlying principles or knowledge. So the last person who talked to him always has a great deal of influence over what he's thinking.
All right, sure. To stay on with us, David, we have some more news coming as far as the U.S. sanctions. Peter has announced that the company operating the Turk Stream gas pipeline will face no issues in its business operations after relocating from the Netherlands to Hungary. The move follows an agreement with Washington ensuring the uninterrupted supply of oil and natural gas to Hungary. He explained that the agreements made in Washington, Moscow and Istanbul guarantee that Hungary's energy supply remains steady. Additionally, the deal ensures that financial transactions related to Turk Stream's operation will not be subject to U.S. sanctions. Despite ongoing conflict in Ukraine and related Western sanctions, Hungary has continued to rely on Russian energy, a stance that has drawn criticism from several European Union and NATO allies. Listen in.
Megállapodásokat kötöttünk Washingtonban, Moszkvában és Isztambulban, amelyek nyomán a kőolaj és földgáz szállítás Magyarországra ma zavartalan. Ugyanakkor a kőolaj és földgáz szállítások zavartalanságát nekünk folyamatosan meg kell védenünk a Brüsszelből és a Kijevből érkező támadásokkal szemben. Az Egyesült Államokkal megkötött megállapodásnak köszönhetően így a működés körülményei biztosítottak lesznek, a török áramlat vezeték működéséhez kapcsolódó fizetési tranzakciók nem esnek szankciók alá, így a török áramlat vezeték az üzemeltető vállalat Hollandiából Magyarországra költözésével minden jogi és pénzügyi támadás dacára zavartalanul fog.
And I now request David to join us back into the discussion here. David, is this going to further shield Russian gas from U.S. ban and sanctions?
Trump administration apparently went along with this idea. Turk Stream, the pipeline, is simply part of Gazprom, the major Russian oil enterprise. And of course, Russia is a one-note economy, fossil fuels, period, end of story. And so from the point of view of Viktor Orban, the de facto dictator in Hungary and the economy of Hungary, without the natural gas from Turkish Stream, they faced probably a tripling of heating prices this winter for homes and offices and factories. So they have a deep economic interest in this, but Orban also, like Trump, has an affinity for Putin because he is a dictator and likes dictators and authoritarians. So this is posing yet another problem with the effectiveness of the sanctions put on by the US and Europe. And one way to address this would be to seize the Russian assets which are frozen and in an orderly fashion dole them out to the Ukrainians to finance their fight against Russia. This may further the advocates for that idea in the European Union.
All right, thank you for now, David, for giving your comment on that and joining us here at NewsX World with your perspective. And we move on, viewers, now. American actor and playwright Jeremy O. Harris has been released from police custody in Japan after his arrest last month on suspicion of attempting to smuggle drugs into the country. Police say Harris was detained on November 16 at Naha Airport in Okinawa, where customs officers found less than a gram of crystal containing the synthetic narcotic MDMA in his bag. Local prosecutors have not confirmed whether he faces formal charges. Japan enforces some of the strictest drug laws among developed countries, including severe penalties for possession and smuggling. And the United States has unveiled a new security strategy focused on strengthening military capabilities to deter potential conflict with China over Taiwan. In response, China pledged to defend its territory and sovereignty over Taiwan and warned against external interference. Taiwan's foreign ministry spokesperson has addressed the issue in a press briefing, addressing that only Taiwan's democratically elected government has the right to represent the island's 23 million people in the international community. Hajiao has rejected China's claim, stating that Taiwan absolutely was not part of the People's Republic of China. Let's listen in.
中华民国台湾是主权独立国家，与中华人民共和国互不隶属。这不仅是台海的客观现状，也是国际社会公认的事实。也只有台湾的民选政府，才能在国际社会以及多边场域，代表2300万台湾人民，中国无权智慧以及干预。我们不知道说为什么中国一直要对号入座。实际上，美方的国家安全战略，它强调的是要遏阻台海冲突。今天可能发生台海冲突的原因，就是中国在台海不断的制造冒进跟采取冒进的行为。那相关的举措已经升高了区域的冲突与紧张。如果中国不这样做的话，实际上是没有会发生台海冲突的可能。
And we now have Biao Teng, who's a Chinese lawyer and political activist, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Mr. Teng, for joining us here at NewsX World. Now, crucial U.S. strategy being shaped with a focus to counter China, also in the South China Sea, and as far as the Caribbean is also concerned, particular concern now, of course, of Taiwan. But I want to ask you about Japan, which has tried to pursue U.S. over the Taiwan question. Now, crucial developments here are coming that Takaichi herself has faced some resistance within her own country as far as her remarks on Taiwan and her increased defense spending following her remarks are concerned.
Yes, so the United States pressured Japan and South Korea to increase their military defense spending and their national security strategy now send a signal that the United States will prevent China from invading Taiwan and also prevent Taiwan from changing the status quo. So I think the Japanese government now has a responsibility to increase their military expenditure, and it's really important to realize that the Chinese invasion of Taiwan, the Xi Jinping's plan to invade Taiwan becomes more and more urgent.
Do you think this strategy has anything more to trouble China?
Yeah. So on the one hand, the strategy is kind of focusing on deterrence, not confrontation. They wanna increase the military presence, the American military presence in Taiwan, and they wanna pressure its allies to keep the status quo of Taiwan and to deter Beijing. But at the same time, I think Trump's policy towards Taiwan is not so consistent. He has sent different messages in terms of Taiwan. That is troublesome, and the strategy is not based on universal values. So it didn't mention Taiwan's liberal democracy, Taiwan's way of life. Its strategy of Taiwan is totally based on geopolitical considerations and economic benefits. They mentioned Taiwan's the important position as the main semiconductor producer, and also Taiwan's geopolitical importance in the first island chain. So that can be problem because if Donald Trump emphasizes on these issues, not Taiwan's liberal democracy, then it's possible that Taiwan is seen by Trump, by American government as a bargaining chip, and it can be given up. It can be negotiated, and another problem is it's really important for Taiwan's security to have a democratic ally internationally. So if the United States doesn't want to protect Taiwan, if European countries doesn't have a clear Taiwan strategy, and then Taiwan is in danger. But what Donald Trump has been doing in his first term and second term is not to unite the democratic allies, but to divide and even distance the democratic allies. That would impact the international order deeply. That's not a positive thing.
Is this national security, the new one that the US is devising, do you think its stance against China is going to benefit Japan in its assertion?
Benefit Japan?
In its claim over, you going for military escalation against China over the Taiwan question, if it challenges Taiwan's so-called sovereignty?
Yeah. Beijing, the People's Republic of China is the huge threat in East Asian area, and also the biggest threat to the rule-based international order. There's a competition between China and Japan, and the relationship between the two countries played a significant role in keeping the security in Asia. But now Beijing becomes more and more aggressive in not only South China Sea, East Asian, but also in the whole world. And so that will be a huge challenge to Taiwan, to Japan. I'm not sure if the Americans' national security strategy would benefit Japan, because it is sending conflicting signals, and it's continue its inconsistency of Trump policy, and it's not based on principle, not based on universal values, and so we will wait and see what's happening in East Asia, and we will see the impact on international order by this national security strategy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tang, for joining us here at NewsX World and speaking to us. And viewers, let's move on to tell you that the Soyuz MS-27 aircraft has now returned safely to Earth, carrying Russian cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Alexei Zubritsky, along with NASA astronaut Jonathan Kim. According to Russia's Roscosmos Space Agency, the capsule landed at 8:04 a.m. Moscow time near the Kazakh city of Zetskazgan. Now, video released by Roscosmos shows Ryzhikov and Kim being carefully removed from the spacecraft and undergoing post-landing medical checks to ensure they are in good health. The astronauts completed an 8-month mission aboard the International Space Station, conducting scientific experiments and station maintenance during their time in orbit. NASA has confirmed this. Their safe return marks another successful joint mission between Russia and the United States in space exploration. Moving on, US President Donald Trump has called a $140 million fine imposed on Elon Musk's social media company X by European Union tech regulators a nasty one, and said he did not understand how European regulators could justify this move. Let's listen.
Look, Europe has to be very careful. They're doing a lot of things. We want to keep Europe Europe. Europe is going in some bad directions. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. They're going in some very bad direction.
Now, this comes as the European Union announced the imposition of the fine for several failures to comply with the rules governing large digital platforms. A European Commission spokesperson said the fine against X's holding company was due to the platform's misleading use of a blue check mark to identify verified users, a poorly functioning advertising repository, and a failure to provide effective data access for researchers. And that's a wrap on America 360. Keep watching NewsX World for more